I want to welcome everybody to our weekend's camp meeting. We have two studies together this weekend. In our last study, which was 5 days ago, this was the third and final presentation that I did on the 15th. We looked at the subject of relationships, and we looked at 4 groups or 4 clusters of Bible verses. Two from the Old Testament, 2 from the New. And we saw that the 2 in the Old Testament were either adultery and fornication, and we see that repeating pattern in the New. And I said we would discuss this further, which I do plan on doing. But I guess the punchline or the conclusion of that study was John chose to use the word fornication in Revelation 17 instead of adultery when legally, using the expanded definition that Jesus gives in Matthew 5, what's going on in Revelation 17 technically is adultery. So I know I haven't proven it, but I stated it as a fact, as of teachers before me. And if you bear with me, bear with us, I hope that you're persuaded or that your question is answered of why John chose to use fornication rather than adultery. To be frank, I don't think it's a really big issue. So I and several of the other teachers believe that Revelation 17 is in fact adultery. And you've seen we've used that model. We'll call it the moral framework that's given in Matthew 5. The verse is on the board. Verse 28. And this expanded view of adultery, even though it's explicitly stated here at the beginning of the New Testament, we have to know that it's not new. These thoughts about a new commandment, or a new testament, or a new covenant, I think we all know that they're not new. These truths, I'll just put it this way, these truths are buried in the foundations of creation. And all Jesus is doing is resurrecting those thoughts and those ideas. As God's church on earth, the kingdom on earth, is going to enter into a new dispensation. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. What I want to discuss today when 2 people become one, we call it marriage. in the King James, it uses the word flesh or person. We're all familiar with that concept. Two individuals become one. And so if you obviously go to the Old Testament, but it's laid out again in the New. Particularly in the book of Romans. I'm going to say chapters 6 and 7. Speaks about marriage there. And it tells you what happens when your partner dies. That's my frozen view, my frozen pose. So for those of us who are online, we're about to start or restart. We're having technical problems, so I apologize. Is there a problem? Carry on. Okay. So, two people become one flesh. It's described in Romans chapter 6 and 7. Specifically 7 verses 2 and 3. It speaks about the release from one's marriage vows after your partner dies. So maybe we'll just read verse 2. I'll read the whole verse. For example, the law says that a man's wife must remain his wife as long as he lives. But once her husband is dead, she is free, going to verse 3, to marry someone else. But if she goes off with another man while her husband is still alive, she is said to be unfaithful, which we call adultery. Any questions on that? Straightforward? So there are numerous Christians who take this law, these verses, and they say the only pretext for remarriage is death. So you can only get remarried if your partner dies. There's no other cause. There are other Christians, like ourselves being Adventists. If you go back to Ellen White's days, they're pretty clear that we need to wait. No? Oh, did you want to say something? You had your hand up. So, they're pretty clear that there are grounds for divorce and remarriage based upon infidelity, or what we call adultery. So when we speak about infidelity or adultery, we're talking about sex. So grounds for divorce So, We're together again. Grounds for divorce: death and sex. They're the two grounds that were given in Scripture to us. We all okay with that? We've discussed it enough. We're familiar with the verses. I've given you the death verse, and we've been discussing the sex verse for quite some time. So we've got Romans and Matthew. What I want to discuss is not the death. I want to discuss why is sex such a big issue that it defines this relationship in the way that universally people understand it to. We know Matthew, in the book of Matthew, Jesus says that even looking at someone sexually essentially is adultery. So depending on how you view the following terms, it's a moral standard that we've spoken about internally, but it's not a legal definition that you can be punished over or that you can take action against. So you can't divorce somebody for looking at another person. Mostly because you don't know that they're doing it. But it's still looking at someone else sexually. What we're not discussing here is emotional adultery. That's a term that's used by many people today, but it's not spoken of in inspiration as qualifying adultery. So we're going to stick with the sex. So my question is, why is sex such an issue? You sleep with somebody? You sleep with somebody? Why would that be grounds for annulling your marriage? You could steal, lie, cheat. You could even kill somebody. If you kill somebody, that's not grounds for divorce. But we would say that's a much more severe crime than just sleeping with somebody. So why, I want your thoughts, why do you think sex has taken on become such an important issue? Because this is an issue that God has dictated or demanded. We haven't. We haven't made it such a big issue. God is the one that's driven this. And I know some people believe in open relationships or polyamory, some people call it. Amory is love, amor, and poly is many. You love many people at the same time. Getting lots of winks here. That means people like it. Um, You can see that God is against those types of relationships. Daniel, why is sex such a important issue? In fact, it's the only issue to divorce on.
Because um, divorce is about two people. Um, when you have sex with another person, it's like choosing another god. So I have a relationship with God and I choose to worship idols. I'm replacing God. So I think it's because it's a matter of substitute, substitute the one you should be with.
What if you marry, you're committed to each other, you did some vows, give a typical example. Your family, some member in your family, becomes financially stressed. They get into financial difficulty. You decide that you're going to help them against your partner's wishes. They say no. They say you can't substitute them for me. From inspiration, that wouldn't be grounds for divorce. So I understand your point about substitution, but why is it the sex bit that's the substitute?
Because I think just like worship, I can just have for one God. Sex is something that I can only have with my partner. Helping people, I can help not only my partner, I can help anyone.
Okay. Um, Gabriel, did you have your hand up, Laura? Yeah.
I was just thinking if it has to do with being or becoming one. So if I'm one together with my partner, this doesn't uh, it doesn't allow to be one with someone else. It wouldn't be one any longer.
Why not one bank account? Why doesn't the bank account model work?
I was going to say that it might have to do with the possibility of procreation, but I think that might be the wrong track.
Okay. Had you finished? Yeah. Laura. Then Curtis. So
Maybe
why sex? I want to know why sex over all the other things that you will do wrong or harm your partner over.
maybe because it's the biggest manifestation of intimacy. Intimacy. Between two people.
So what is intimacy? When you say this intimacy, what do you mean by that?
It's physical, emotional, or should be.
So what would money be? Just emotional, not physical?
Sure.
When you take money from your partner, you get hurt, angry. So there is an emotional component. Your partner might not get things to sustain their body, so there could be a physical component to that as well. So that's what I want to understand what you meant by intimacy.
Because in our society, at least, you you can take money from other people. We can. But intimacy is not something that you do in every place with every people. I don't know.
Okay, Curtis, Pedro, Michaela.
A few months ago, you did a study on intergenerational wealth, and the premise of that can be understood under an Old Testament framework, when God is raising up a people and the covenant that God has is really important. And under that Old Testament framework, that covenant is passed down through generations. And so Gabriel alluded to it when he ended, I think. Gabriel alluded to something when he finished talking, when he spoke about procreation. And so sex and the product of sex, being children, means that once you interfere with a marriage, you're interfering with that flow of the covenant. Because if said other person has a child, then that intergenerational line gets broken. Again, just viewing this under the framework that you set up in your previous study.
Pedro. Pedro? Doesn't matter.
Pedro or me? Or me?
Neither.
Okay.
Neither.
Okay.
We're, just for those online, we're just going to take a pause to open Sabbath.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Michaela.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. In the directions to say before Daniel, I understand this discussion of why sex is so important. Sorry. Can you say it a bit louder? Yes. Sorry. I'm going to be more short. I understand this discussion in a direction similar to Daniel.
Please look at me, not her.
Okay, sorry.
I need to understand.
For me, there is something in the parable that God created in the marital union, similar to the union of God Himself being one in three. I don't know if I say accurate.
The Godhead is one with, there are three beings,
Yes.
three persons, but they're also one.
Many things can damage. Is okay?
Yeah?
Yes. A
Damage.
relationship. But it seems that having a relationship with another person is like having more than one master. And that will diminish our spirit, I think, and how we understand the image of God Himself and our image too, and also our own image. I think something is breaking, but not only the relationship. Maybe something is breaking about our relationship with God, about our understanding, our possibility. Maybe something is break, or maybe something we cannot understand in the future. About how is God, about how God is.
Okay? Oh, Pedro?
So we're talking about grounds of divorce in the Bible, right?
Say that again, sorry.
Grounds for divorce in the Bible, according to the Bible.
My question is specific.
Why sex?
Why sex? Because sex, we're spoken from a biblical perspective, but anyone in the world knows that sex is the make or break thing. Carry on, didn't want to distract you.
I was just thinking that it is because of the ownership aspect that sex had in history.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt. If we start using those arguments, for instance, intergenerational wealth, family lines, children, and past history, ownership that was part and parcel of the past, then we can all have free sex today because we don't believe in any of that stuff.
No, I'm saying in the past, men had ownership over their wives. So that's why owning her body was so important. And we have inherited a lot of that. But we have expanded the grounds for divorce to many things. We have expanded the grounds for divorce to many other things.
Who's we?
I think humanity, people in general.
If we were to condense everything I don't know if you agree with this. It's either death, sex, or we don't get along anymore. We don't get along, it's called a no-fault divorce or irreconcilable differences. And irreconcilable differences covers everything, all the other bits and pieces. So, you're suggesting, I'm asking you, that the reason why sex is the premier issue is because of our patriarchal past, which means it wouldn't be valid for divorce today.
No, I think it is still valid for divorce today.
So then the reason can't be ownership. I own your body, therefore I am the only one that can have sex with you. That may have been the past, but if it was the past, and we live in a free world now, then we should be free to have open sex. So we can't use that as a reason why sex is the thing. So I put children there because we know that doesn't work either. Because it's a patriarchal model, which is the one that you just gave a different version of that ownership. Because if that were the case, I'm not an expert on it, but I suspect that's what polyamorous relationships, the arguments that people use that they're valid today. Because a woman will say, you don't own my body, I can do what I want with it. And the ultimate expression of that is that she could have sex with whoever she wants. So I'm still trying to understand why sex is such an issue. I'll go with Lara first, then I'll send the mic. Yeah.
I have a point against family lines.
I didn't catch that, sorry.
I have a point against family lines.
I don't like it, but I just put it there. And I've made the same point about... I'll put what Pedro said. Pedro said ownership. But like you, I don't think they're the reason. So what? So tell me why sex, all in every dispensation, in all cultures, even atheists know that. I'm going to say they know that sex is wrong outside of a marriage.
I don't know, I just have something to add to the discussion about something that I question myself, or I question the world. Because some people in polyamorous relationships just don't give this heavy weight to the sex. and they can have sex with other people, it is not a problem. So, seems to be that the problem for me is the way that we have the jealous part. Maybe if you just risk, you raise the jealous, maybe it's not a problem.
Would it be a problem for you if your partner had sex because you're married? Would it be a problem for you?
If I be able, maybe if I be able to
Yes?
erase the part of the jealously, maybe not.
So the problem is you're a bad person because you have this really bad habit of being jealous. And if you could free yourself from that, it would be okay. So I know you don't believe that. So what do you mean?
I don't believe that everybody needs to do this, but some people are already like this.
I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about you and the vast majority of people. It's like 99% of all humans. They don't even have to be told. They work it out themselves that sex outside of marriage is bad. I say unforgivable. Why? That's why you divorce. Everybody should understand what I mean by unforgivable in its context. Daniel? Anna Paula, you don't want to say something?
Yeah, she wants. You're just the same. So she,
Yeah, say on her, speak on her behalf. But pretend it's you.
so I know some people that have a relationship and also have sex with other people, but they have como que é a palavra? Amor incondicional. Amor incondicional. Inconditional love for the partner. So having sex with other people doesn't influence this unconditional love for the partner. And I believe sex not a problem. It's the unconditional love that has to be the issue.
So you, which means you, you'd be okay to just have sex with anybody. I know you know. We all know. I'm going to say we all know people that do it. That claim that it's okay. But they're really very rare. And the question is, would you do it? You're in a relationship. Would you be Would you be comfortable if your partner slept with somebody?
Today, but maybe in 10 years of relationship.
Is that because you become a better person or you get bored of them?
So what people say is
No,
because they
tell me
get
what
bored.
you say. How do you feel?
It's because maybe sex is the same thing and doesn't change. There is nothing new.
Like bread. People eat bread all their lives.
Sometimes they want tapioca.
Like God. They'll get bored of God and want Satan.
But
So I think that was your argument.
God always reveals himself new for us.
You dream that. God hasn't revealed anything new to you in your reasonably long lifespan. Honestly, just review what you know today about God compared to what you knew before, and it's not that different. What's changed is your definition of common sense. And I suspect God hasn't changed one bit. And what you're actually just referring to is realizing, I say this respectfully, how stupid you were in the past. Because you had ideas about God that God never taught you, someone else did. So I'm going to suggest that God's the same.
Correct. But I think people do that because they get bored. I don't know if that's. I don't think this is good, but that's the. My friends they tell me this. They want something new. Is it bad?
Yeah. That's fine. Curtis.
In South Africa last year, you spoke about adultery, and maybe I misunderstood it, but what I understood from that discussion was, the question was, is adultery physical or emotional? And I think the conclusion was that it was emotional, not physical. And so, based on that, I'm trying to understand what you've just brought up now. Are you asking the question, why is sex so important as a fact that it is? With regards to adultery? Or are you asking why have we made it so important as humanity?
I think I did say this at the beginning. We didn't make it important. I said God did. And therefore, from the two choices, I'm saying it is. We didn't make it a big issue. It is a big issue. And I want to know why.
Big issue in relationship to adultery, or just a big issue in relationships?
Relationships. Why when you step over that line, everything collapses? What is so special about sex?
Okay, I've misunderstood the discussion because I thought you were framing it under adultery's context.
I was, but I don't know. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the point you're making. Adultery is just the name of a crime of having sex with someone else. But there aren't any laws like, if I gave my cows away, we're done for. Why is it only sex that's the issue?
Yeah, so I'm asking, how is that? Is what you're saying different to what you've explained in the past?
I don't think it is.
So, in regard to sex, I think it's just impossible to pretend that this was some kind of mistake. Or some misunderstanding or whatever. There are many steps necessary until you lay in a bed with someone else and perform sex. Maybe kiss, whatever. There are many things that you could frame in a way that maybe weren't supposed to happen, or you weren't really aware of what you were doing or whatever. But sex takes many steps until you have sex, and yeah, that's what I think.
Anyone else? Who wants to speak? I'll do Michaela, then Lara, then Curtis. Oh, I'd lost. Okay. Oh, Pedro, sorry.
He can translate.
You can do Spanish. That's fine.
Estaba pensando con lo que hablaron tanto Curtis como Daniel.
So I've been thinking about what Curtis and Daniel have said.
Si bien empezamos hablando sobre adulterio,
Even though we started talking about adultery,
podríamos ir por el camino fácil.
and we could have go through the easy path.
Please tell me the answer. You don't have to give me all the preamble.
Okay. Quizás
Maybe
no tengamos una respuesta.
maybe we don't have an answer.
I don't want to persuade anybody. I want to know why we believe what we believe. I just want to stop. In a minute, it won't be a minute. I'm going to switch subjects, and I'm going to say, how did you invent divorce on the grounds of? Laura? Abuse. She said it right at the beginning, and I said no. If you can't work out how you can divorce on sex, don't tell me abuse is even easier to work out. We've got to work out we've got to figure out in order. So we've got to have some good arguments to say death is easy. They're not there. Before we discuss abuse, which today in the movement just rolls off the tongue like it's obvious. Let's go with sex, because that should be obvious too, and it doesn't appear to be. Who's next? You didn't finish. No, that was only interjected then. I didn't mean for you to finish.
I want to change it for a question to you. you don't necessarily need to answer. The only way possible that I can see for for sex being so relevant and know the many other things is to take it into an explanation similar as how we do it with Sabbath.
You take notes. As you're taking your notes, just want to remind us to not break rules, which several of us have already done in this class. You cannot go to God to explain sex, because the natural explains the spiritual, not the spiritual explaining the natural. It's clearly breaking rules, and I didn't object to it before. I'm just reminding us. Sex is supposed to teach us about God, not the other way round. Carry on, Michaela.
I was about to ask you what you just answered.
I mind read you.
I was going to associate it as a proof of loyalty like the Sabbath is.
Why is sex the proof of loyalty and not financial fidelity?
More relevance against proofs that we see outside in the world or testimonies from people.
I haven't said that.
And in theory, we just still don't have the answer of why.
Okay, so you're not sure. Curtis.
This is my last try.
Go for it.
We spoke during the camp meeting about thoughts and actions and what God is going to judge us on. And at least my opinion was actions. But Matthew draws a connection between thoughts and actions. Or at least Jesus does. In that Sermon on the Mount. And so, at the point at which you have sex, it's just the physical, actionable demonstration of something that began a long time ago. So, sex, I'm suggesting, is the physical manifestation of that emotional cheating that you've committed already.
Daniel, then Laura.
Talking about the natural explaining the spiritual. Maybe because sex is good and we can choose to have with a lot of people. But even though we have many options, we choose to stay with our partner as a demonstration of fidelity. And this relationship teaches us about how we should behave with God. In the sense of we can worship many gods, but we choose to worship one. So sex would be like worship. That's weird, but I think it's like this. And natural and spiritual, not the same thing.
My comment was a tag team effort with Carolina.
That was,
My comment was a tag team effort with Carolina.
Did I use a bad argument?
sorry?
Was that a good argument?
No, that's all fine. I'm listening. Anybody? Laura?
I just want to add about something that Daniel say before. That many polyamorous people don't do sex with a lot of people because they are bored. But because they believe that they don't need to refrain their desire. But talking about adoration, worship, we believe that we need to worship God, worship other people. No, through worshiping other people. So I think this point don't help us.
Can't do that. We're online. Okay.
But why?
can't do
My
that.
last. I want to close with that question, Parminder. Why you think sex is so important? Why you think?
I want to be clear. I do not think sex is so important. Everybody does. 99% of humans won't be in a relationship if you cheat on them. They won't tolerate it. And neither does God. When he sets all these rules up. So it's not me.
Why this?
I was hoping that I'd get you to justify it for me. So let me have a go. Warning. I do not like to promote people influencers or famous people. Sometimes I recommend books because they're good, but I don't like to recommend individuals. So I'm going to give you a name for those radical feminists amongst us. If you don't like this person because they're sexist, I completely understand. This person is a psychologist. I think that's what the correct name would be. So, this is not a recommendation. Get his last name correct. Alan de Botton, not Botton. So, the only reason I mention his name, he's pretty famous. He's written several books. And everybody's heard of Ted, T-E-D. He came, this is my version of the story. He came to prominence because he did a famous TED talk that you're all probably going to look for now. And he's going to address the subject of marriage. And he's going to say, all of you, you're going to be, I'm going to just call it laser focused. That means like you just have one mission in life to choose the perfect partner. And you're going to do all in your power to marry that right person. And then he says, there is a fact that all you people need to understand, married or single. So either you're going to use the word will, future, or have, past. You already have or you will. Past. He says, you will marry the wrong person. If you're already married, you've married the wrong person. That's the premise of this talk. And he breaks it down why. Because we think we look for the right things in a person, but what we end up really doing in real life is we marry on the wrong premise. I'll say in layperson's terms that I can understand. I'll say I'm not a professional, I'll say it in my own words. You look at a person, you think you know who they are, like you have a list. You think you know what they are, but they turn out not to be that thing. So who you thought you married isn't who you married. So they're the wrong person by definition. And from there it just gets worse. Marriage does. So what I've just said there isn't defining about sex and the story that we're about to that I asked about. I don't know how many people in this room have had sex, but if you were to write it down, I don't mean like a pornography novel. Whatever the name, erotica. Yes, that's it. Curtis doesn't know what the word erotica means, but it might be the right one. And I don't know what he's talking about. So, if I ask you to write it down, just the mechanics of sex. The reality of sex is pretty, I'm going to say is disgusting. Whether it's oral or just regular. When you think of the parts that you're bringing together, and you look at the purpose of those parts that you use 99% of the time, it's pretty gross, the reality of sex. And what you have to do which you don't realize that you do, you have to shut down many protective mechanisms to actually engage in sex. When you go to the bathroom and you do your things, the three things, in English we say your number one, your number twos, and gas. Sorry? Gas. Flatulence. It's pretty gross. And yet, if you just think of oral sex, where your nose is, and I don't think we get the point. Because if we got the point, we'd all become, I just call it monks, or the female version, we'd become celibate. So what we end up having to do in order to engage in sex is shut down multiple defense mechanisms that are inbuilt within us that we would run away from. When something smells funny, you instinctively repel yourself from it. All of you who have had sex, you know it smells funny. You might pretend that it doesn't, but it does. Smells. Real life. So, I think the reason it's sex, I'm going to put one word down. Covers a multitude of issues. It's about vulnerability. If you look at all the components that make up marriage, sharing your things, sex is the one that you expose yourself, you make yourself vulnerable above anything and everything. You know that you look ugly, unattractive. I don't know, you look unattractive. And all these fashion houses do everything in their power to make you look attractive. Not just makeup, not just jewelry, but clothing. We don't call it a bra, we call it lingerie. And there's a difference between a bra and lingerie. A bra is functional, and lingerie is sexual. You take the lingerie off, and you're just left with your body, which most of us aren't happy with. So visually, it's not very good. And you all know how you smell. You're always protecting yourself against that smell. Now, when you get to sex, you have to completely ignore all of that and hope that your partner accepts you as you are, visually, sensually, the sounds that you make, how you smell, all the person's five senses. You have to get to a place where you think they will fully accept you and all that gets reciprocated. And I'm going to suggest that sex, I've called it vulnerability here, is what brings all of these things together, that when you get to a place where you can have sex with somebody and you can give yourself. Prostitution doesn't do that. They're always withholding part of themselves. And most people, whether they're male or female, most prostitutes are the most attractive parts of, on the bell curve of humanity. The bell curve of you, they're always the attractive people, the young attractive ones, generally speaking. It's rare that you'll find a 60-year-old prostitute, whether they're men or women. So I'm suggesting the reason why sex is the one that's been targeted is because it's the one element of our humanity where we have to be totally vulnerable. And this is why rape is such a heinous crime, an evil crime. It can work both ways, but a woman has to all of her defense mechanisms have to be put down in order to allow a man to come close with her, to have intimacy with her. She has to feel safe. I know it sounds sexist, but it works the other way too. The difference between that and rape is that at some point in that sexual act, she's not willing to take all those defense mechanisms down for whatever the reason is. And we call that rape. And it could be many things. Like, I'm not in the mood tonight, to a war crime. All of them are just degrees of the woman saying, I'm not prepared to be vulnerable. I'm not prepared to let go of all my defense mechanisms. So that you can come so close to me. This is all physical, of course. And I'm not trying to spiritualize this and make it all emotional. But I think this one flesh experience is predominantly a physical phenomena. Which is why sex is the thing that makes or breaks marriage. I only mentioned that psychologist not because of his famous TED Talk, but he discusses this whole issue about our defense mechanisms have to be taken down voluntarily It's much harder and much more complicated than we think. And rather than explaining God and humans and bringing that down to sex, I want to suggest that this concept of vulnerability between two humans is what our relationship with God is supposed to be. That we are supposed to be completely vulnerable to God, and God has to be completely vulnerable to us. I don't think it's about worship or ownership or children or the various things that we've spoken about. They're all factually true when it comes to relationships. But I think the reason it's sex is because it's the one part of our lives that you really have to trust somebody. And that vulnerability then has a spiritual component of us willing to be vulnerable to God. Which means we can totally expose ourselves to God, everything. And even though you might say that you do, I suspect many of you don't. That you're not totally open, honest, and vulnerable to God. And in the context of our discussion, that means you can't have sex with God. If that's true, and God is always good, and you say, okay, let's have a go at this relationship, and God says, okay, in the context of sex, and if I'm going to define rape, wherever you are on the scale, 1 to 10, like, depending on which one's the worst, we'll say 10 is the worst, 1 is the least horrible form of rape. You're married and you don't want sex, and your husband says, come on, we've got to do it. And you say, oh. That's what level 1. Level 10, you've got your legs crossed and you are kicking and screaming. And it's violent. 1 to 10. So, all I want us to understand is that there's a defense mechanism that you're not willing to let go of. And that's the difference between what we call, I'll say, intimacy or love and rape. So I'm suggesting if you're not fully vulnerable to God, and if sex is the literal expression of a relationship with God, what's going on in your relationship with God most of the time, it's what? Rape. Who's raping whom? God is raping you, us. And I think it's something that you may find weird or strange. It's because you are not prepared or ready to be completely vulnerable. I won't use the word penetrate, but you won't let God into the innermost part of yourself. You hold back, and then if you want God to come to you, it's not healthy. Now, we all know that God says that I won't do anything unless you give me permission. So don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not saying God is spiritually raping you and you don't know. What I am saying is, most of us are not married to God. Most of us have a relationship that's not right, and we're not one flesh with God. We are not one flesh with God. And I think that's why sex is the marker for marriage. It's the thing that you have to be completely vulnerable and expose yourself. We've run out of time, but I've one last point from Lara.
I really like your point about defense mechanisms, and I agree. But I think that there are people that are able to achieve this kind of vulnerability,
Are able to what?
to achieve this kind of vulnerability in a relationship with more than one person.
Sure. I'm not saying that people can't. My point is that the reason sex is the marker is because of this issue of vulnerability.
God is vulnerable in our relationship.
God is willing to expose themselves completely. Most people aren't willing to explore that and really see the ugly, smelly, dirty parts of God. We just pretend they're not there.
Mine to them. How am I vulnerable? How does that look like?
So the question was, how do we become vulnerable to God? How do we really do that? If you're married, you've got it easy because you can practice it through sex. To be completely vulnerable and not hold back from your partner. Most people who are married and have had sex even for decades don't really feel comfortable. And I'm not trying to disagree with what Daniel said. After the 10 years, the reason you want to move on is not because it's boring, it's because you weren't able to be fully vulnerable, to be fully trusting and completely be one with that partner. That they know you and you know them. So when you look for someone else, we think it's boredom or familiarity, but what we're actually seeking, without realizing it, is that true love. That we can connect to somebody and be fully vulnerable with them and they with us. And if we remember Bottom, whoever you choose, it's always going to be the wrong person. It's also about our self-exploration. And that's why, according to Lara, polyamory works. Because this individual is willing to be vulnerable. And most people can't even do it with one person. And those people seem to be able to do it with several.
It's
Go on.
it seems that what you've described, sex and vulnerability, is the climax of a process of breaking down barriers. So someone's only going to have sex with someone else in that vulnerable state if before that they've been slowly becoming vulnerable with them.
Yes,
So hence the thoughts and action.
exactly. Yes, I wasn't denying what you said before. You've all been there. You know about all your blemishes. You have to pull your trousers down and your pants, and you have to let someone see and hope they're not going to reject you. And that takes many steps to get there. Prostitution, you pay somebody that they'll either pretend, not either, they just pretend that they don't care. But they really do. They'll look at you and think, yuck. But if you pay them enough, they'll do it. And that's why that whole industry is evil and destructive of good. Because it's not real. I'm going to be in trouble. Daniel will be the last one and I have to stop. I'm sorry, Lara.
So why the vulnerability issue? If you would be a key for divorce. Why being vulnerable with someone else would be divorceable?
Sex, this vulnerability, I've exposed myself completely to you. And when you accept that from a person and you betray that trust that they've placed upon you, they have betrayed everything about you. Your whole identity is lost, fully exposed. And most people find that so painful they have to walk away. The problem is we don't think. It's all mechanistic. So we don't even analyze our own emotions. Money, stealing from your spouse is a one-dimensional problem. Sex is three-dimensional. And when you give of yourself to somebody, it's that ultimate betrayal that gives you, I'll say it gives you the right to walk away from that person. I want to thank everybody. If we've got any more thoughts, we can pick them up tomorrow. Hope I get some thoughts online from people. Why is sex the thing? If you don't agree with the thoughts that I've shared. Please don't think you're missing out if you don't watch this person, this that I mentioned. They're not the go-to person on marriage counselling. I'm not trying to portray that at all. I want to apologise to everybody for the technical difficulties. It was out of our control. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, as we discuss this sensitive subject, I know that it can be triggering for many people. For those of us who have been hurt, that we've experienced the pain of infidelity, or whether we feel uncomfortable about being completely vulnerable, that we don't trust our partners, we don't feel comfortable with who we are. Help us to try to understand. Beyond all the mechanisms of enjoyment and children, beyond those reasons, why you gave us sex, so that we might have a better understanding of our relationship with you. I thank you that we're able to speak about these things and share our thoughts and ideas. In Jesus' name, amen.